Well,
No
a
judgment zone.
castle and a kule and this is, you're putting me on the spot. Check software. This is hard. And the one thing I love about Yoruba is the greetings. You know, the
We
Kusimi
always have
Sunday,
something.
Kujoku. I mean, there's well done for sitting down, well done for
Yeah.
standing up, well done for
Ekushe.
eating. I love it.
Yeah.
Ekushe, I love it. So my Yoruba is very rusty, I will admit, and I can swear like an area boy, to be fair. So, but I won't practice that right now.
This episode was made possible by Narrative Landscape Press. They hired the publishers of Wahala by Nikki May in Nigeria, and we want to thank them for gifting us a copy for the purpose of this particular episode. So thank you guys. We appreciate you.
Hey, you. Welcome to the What Reading Book Podcast, the no boring zone where we get you all excited about books that are worth reading.
On the What Reading Podcast, you get some unbiased take on books, juicy scoops of what runs through the minds of your favorite author. You can call us your virtual book connoisseurs that help you filter through the many books out there and let you know the ones worth reading.
On this podcast, we talk about different book genre. We do not discriminate, from fiction to non-fiction, poetry, biographies, memoirs, you name it, so long as it is written by an author of African descent and project our very own authentic African stories. You can count us in. So welcome on board and thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the show.
How have you been? How you doing?
Not too bad. I'm back in England now, and it got very hot. So luckily, I'd acclimatized in Lagos, so I was ready for the weather. No, I'm good. Working on book 2, so back to the grind, but very good.
Hey, I'm totally looking forward to the book 2, I'm keeping my fingers crossed that we'll keep getting to read more from you, and Wahala is not just going to be a one-time wonder, because that happens.
Wahala will always do.
Wahala will always do.
African authors, that I've read, and I'm like, oh my goodness, we want more. Give us some more, and they've just gone cricket on us for like years, and I'm like, what is going on? But hopefully, we'll get to read something new from you soon.
Okay, hi guys, it's good to have you here, Nikki. I think we'll just start off with getting our listeners in, just keying them into, this exciting session that we look forward to having with you. So, I'm sure most of the emails that we've shared with you sort of try to capture what we are trying to achieve. You're welcome to the Worth Reading Podcast. One of the things that we've tried to do with this is to have a deep dive into, books, especially written for Africa, by Africa, in Africa. But, because we know that Africans are writers, Africans are readers. And what better way to help people sift through all of the books that are out there, especially just picking out the juicy ones, and just saving them the stress of going through a million books before they, get to pick up a juicy one. So that's why we're doing this. And it's so good to have you here on the show. And we look forward to a really exciting time just having conversations about this thriller, I would call it. It's really a thriller, just diving into the lives of these characters we've portrayed. I have a lot of questions, really, and I hope that this would help answer some of my questions and curiosity.
I'll do my best.
He is the very serious one. I will be coming in and out with the old laughter, wit, and humor just to lighten things up a bit. And like Seyi rightly said, your book is quite juicy. It's very conversational. It's like one book you finish reading and you're with your girls that do not even like books, that are not bibliophile, there would be something to talk about, and you keep arguing about like what played out, the plot twist and the craziness of all the characters. But hopefully we'll get to dive into more details concerning that as the episode goes on. All right, so my first question definitely would be around how it feels to have written a book for the first time, and a book that actually kind of is an hybrid of your two cultures that I believe you're very proud of. Were you a bit reluctant of what the acceptance was going to be like, both here in England and of course back at home as well?
To be honest, when I wrote it, I wasn't, because when I was writing the book, I was writing it for myself. I didn't have any idea that I would actually find an agent. I didn't have any idea it would get published, which was very freeing. It meant that I wasn't feeling any pressure of expectation. I was literally thinking, let me write the kind of book I want to read. And if I'm the only person who reads it, that's fine. But once it went out into the world, then yes, the pressure became heavy. And you started thinking, what are people going to think? And are they going to judge me on the basis of what I've written? Because the book is fiction. Whilst it picks up on my two cultures, which I am very, very proud of, it is not real life. I am not in any of these characters. I might have used bits of myself and bits of my friends as character traits, but these people are all made up. Especially Isabel. I certainly don't know any Isabels. So I was always hoping that people won't judge me by anything my characters do. And funnily enough, I have found that I think the response in Nigeria has been the most wonderful response. People who've read it there, who have been so positive. They can be annoyed with my characters because, don't get me wrong, they annoyed me as I was writing them. So
very annoying characters.
But I think Nigerians, they understand what it is to be a Nigerian, whereas a lot of Black people who have not grown up in Nigeria or in Africa have such a different experience of being Black. I think they see it very differently. I tried to explain to my friends that I didn't know there was such a thing called racism until I came to England, because we don't have this in Nigeria. So our opinions and our attitudes to it are so different. So I actually think Nigerians get it. I think Nigeria also used to being rude about ourselves. I mean, you cannot have a conversation. I was in Lagos for 8 days last month, and there wasn't one day we didn't abuse our government. There wasn't one day we didn't talk about NEPA. There wasn't one day we didn't, it is part of our lives to talk about all the wahala that has to be about living in Lagos. And yet you can still love your country and still be critical. So I think I wasn't worried about it until it came out, although there is a pressure because there's so many amazing Nigerian authors. You have Chinwe Achebe, you have Wole Soyinka, you have Chimamanda, and they set the bar so high that you can't be scared that I'm just writing my own little thriller. My own book is supposed to be fun. It's not, it's not a worthy book. And you can feel a bit of pressure about it. You have to just do what you feel and go for it. And so far, so good.
Lovely. That's
interesting.
An exciting response.
To hear,
I wasn't expecting that. Yeah.
Interesting to hear all of that. I'm sure Tobi will be a bit disappointed with one of the things you had mentioned while responding, because you sort of jumped into one of the questions that she already had lined up for you. But I'll just take that off her and just go right into it. Are you really serious about, none of the characters, being any representation, of you or some, because, reading through the characters, one of the things that I found interesting is the fact that they weren't typical characters, right? So, sometimes you read books and you can literally place a character with a character in another book, for instance. But, the realities that they lived were so dynamic. It wasn't the typical Nigerian or, Nigerian story or, Nollywood story, for instance. It was a lot of chaos that was happening in a very controlled way at some points. And then all of a sudden, Wahala just burst.
Your face.
Well, I think there are bits of me in the characters. So, for example, Simi dropped out of medical school. I put my hands up. I dropped out of medical school. My father, it was disgrace. I was basically disowned. I mean, it was either you get back to medical school or you're on your own.
Yeah, I can imagine.
It was terrible, especially I was groomed to be a doctor before I could walk. It was just, Nikki will be a doctor. So I gave Simi that problem. Ronke's grandparents, her mother's parents, they wanted nothing to do with her white grandparents. My white grandparents are very similar. I never met them. They didn't want anything to do with us because my mother had married that Black man. So I gave them problems that were mine. And even Boo has some serious issues and some serious misconceptions and prejudice. Let's call it what it is. Boo is very prejudiced about Nigerians and Nigerian men in particular. And I've met people like that. And if you're brought up in some parts of England where you never ever see Black people, I think that prejudice can be natural, especially as over here, lots of the things we hear about Nigeria are negative. We hear about 419, we hear about Boko Haram, we hear about corruption corruption. We hear about bad roads. The only time we hear anything good about Nigerians is when one of them scores a goal in a game for Arsenal or for Man United. And at that point, they stop being Nigerians. We now call them British. So, I can understand why some people's opinions are so negative. But I wanted my characters to have flaws. I wanted them to be slightly damaged characters, because I think it's more interesting to read about people who have issues, people who aren't perfect. I find them much more interesting than reading about perfect people. So even Boo, with her problems with motherhood, she was always complaining. Boo was a moaner, I won't lie. Boo, there's every morning Boo would wake up and say, But there are people like that, and it doesn't mean they're bad people. Some people just find what the cards they are dealt hard to deal with. We can look at them and think, but you're so lucky. But unless you're wearing the cap, you cannot tell somebody how to feel. So I wanted them to be realistic and entertaining. And I guess the Nollywood thing does creep in, though, because I like a lot of drama in my drama. And I think that comes from being in Nigeria. So I do know that I did throw a lot of Wahala their way, and the ending was slightly Nollywoodish.
Yeah, which is fantastic for me. And we can never get enough of Nollywoodish stories in this part
exactly.
of the world. One of the things you said would definitely lead me to my next question, which is around how you express subtle elements of your prejudice towards Nigerian men in your book Wahala. Like, it was so vivid. I was having a chat with Uzo of Book Nook. I don't know if she actually reviewed your book on Instagram.
Yeah.
We dissected your book sort of. And one of the things I was quick to mention was, I'm sure this woman, in quote, I'm just going to keep it as real as possible, that wait, has any Yoruba demon actually broken her heart before? I think it breaks her heart.
Did she ever meet a Coyote?
Like, oh my God, she's such a proponent of European men. Like, she definitely must have a thing for them and a lot against our own people. Our own Nigerian men. And I know they can be a jackass sometimes. Pardon my French. Yeah, I just said that. But then,
I didn't hear that,
honestly, yeah, they feel good of them out there, but yeah, they are just very, very scarce, and it's so difficult for you to find them. But that's an aside. So back to my question, right? What exactly is the backstory behind your prejudice against Nigerian men? I know, you probably might have had an experience. You just might not be open to sharing so much, but maybe a tiny little bit would help to provide a bit of perspective.
I have no prejudice against Nigerian men. So this is again why you have to separate the author from the characters. I am not any of these people, so I have no prejudice against that. My father is Nigerian, my brother is Nigerian, some of my closest friends are Nigerians, so I have no prejudice. I also get really annoyed when people say Kayode is a baddie, because he wasn't. Kayode is a good guy.
No. Pages, I was like, Uncle, you.
Yes, for the first few pages, I wrote it intentionally so that you would think he's a baddie. But Kayode is not a baddie. In fact, Kayode is probably the best person in the whole book. He's probably the most decent person.
Character.
Yes, because that was the point.
Yes, because I think a lot of the instances that were created for Kayode were times where it didn't seem like a stand-up guy. So, every time there was an appointment, there was either a football game coming in between, there was a meet-up with these guys.
But that's typical of it.
And that's typical. That's what they do. No, but that's typical. That's typical guy behavior. So, for instance, there's every chance that a guy would die to watch a Champions League game rather than just sit, and, well, I'm being careful now.
But for the many sacrifices that Ronke was making for him, and how she was always willing to go above and beyond to satisfy him, you would think that he would also be willing to make quite a number of compromises too. There were just one too many. And I feel that I can't just allow those instances.
So I think one thing that you could have helped Kayode with, you could have given us a perspective on Kayode. So, it was a single-sided story.
Yes.
So it was all about how he appeared to Ronke.
Yes. Almost worse, it was how he appeared to her friends. Because actually it was Boo and Simi that had the problem with Kayode. Ronke on her own, if they just said, Moko is watching a football match, how for do? Don't be so tough on him. Which is what I would say to my girlfriends. If my husband is watching Chelsea, there is nothing that is going to be more important than watching Chelsea. I will be sitting at every train station for 5 hours until they have finished that game. And my friends will say, Bokon is Chelsea, how for do? And I think if her friends had been more supportive of him, then she would have been able to accept him more. But obviously, I also want, this is fiction with drama. So we had to paint Kayode as the bad guy. And we had to only find out towards the end that actually he wasn't the bad guy at all. But to come back to the actual point, have I met a few Kayodes? Yes. Have I fallen in love with a few Kayodes? Yes.
So I think now you have to replace the word. I think you have to replace the name rather. So that means that Kayode wouldn't be the proper context of answering that question of have you met a few Kayodes. So there are a list of guys that they talk about. Maybe you've met a few Femis or a few
a few bios.
A few bios, right?
But I've also met a few Justins and a few. Let's not pretend that Yorubadi. They have Oyibo baddies too. It is not something. Melanin is not a character trait.
Exactly.
Your melanin does not dictate your character or whether you're reliable at all.
I think 100%. It's just satisfying for men. It's just satisfying for many to say that. And whoever came up with that term, Yoruba demon, really, yeah.
And it's such a catchy phrase.
Oh, so catchy, so catchy. So catchy.
But I would say my one thing and I actually get very angry, Kayode was not a baddie. Kayode was possibly the best person in the book. And in fact, when we understand Kayode's story towards the end, we understand why he had commitment issues, because his encounter with a certain person had given him those commitment issues.
Mm-hmm.
I can't really blame him.
I kind of feel that Kayode is like the portrait of a typical African or Nigerian man, because African men are not known to be the most expressive. Many of them just tend to, just lock up, and you hardly can decipher what's running through their minds half the time. And so it basically did less. It didn't talk so much. I mean, I checked out the bulk of the dialogue and all of that, but it just gives me the impression that, perhaps you were also trying to portray what a typical African or Nigerian guy is like, that they just leave this piece of cliff for you and you need to go and, elaborate on it.
I don't want to generalize. You can never generalize because obviously there are exceptions to every rule. But I do think it's true that some Nigerian men expect their girlfriend or wife to cook, to clean, to be almost like to be so impressed with them just turning up to eat the food. And I do think there needs to be a reset and I think it is happening. I do think this is changing, and I think we shouldn't generalize, but I do think there's a certain sense. I think that boys in general are brought up with a certain sense of entitlement.
Exactly.
Or excessive.
Yeah, it abounds basically. Yeah, interesting. So I will be diving real quick into fashion. Oh God, I love Simi. She's a fashionista,
She certainly is.
I totally love how she keeps it together, and in spite of how she tries to accentuate the beautiful parts of her body, her body features that were the most appealing and all of that. And so right now, I'm just going to ask if that also kind of embodies a bit of your fashion sense, which of the entire 4 characters actually depicts your sense of fashion. Because again, Simi, I think, is also very similar to you, because she actually ran an agency as well. I don't know why I just keep making up ideas and concepts, and I'm like, which of these characters is Nikki?
Maybe there's a Simi in her.
When I think it's definitely Simi, and then I see Ronkesu and I love for food, and I'm like, this is Nikki as well.
And you're right, there's a Simi in me, but I do not have Simi's clothes budget. I wish I had her clothes budget. I wish I had the Bank of Martin to be signing checks as I go spending money. I haven't got the Bank of Martin. I don't have her figure either. I would love to have all of those attributes of Simi, but I have to say it was such fun writing that character, because I could go onto my online shopping. I could just pick up anything in the store. Obviously, I didn't actually check out. I just put it in the basket without checking out. But it was such fun dressing her because she was a proper fashionista. You know, she was always name dropping this designer or that designer. She was so in touch with all the trends. So it was really good fun to write her character. But in terms of fashion, I think I'm probably a Ronke. Put on my jeans, add some frock, a little bit of bronzer, a little bit of lip gloss, and I'm on my way.
Just here and there.
Yeah.
Interesting. So I think one of my curiosities, you know, just going through the book is even getting to even understand you or getting to know you a bit. You know, I know that not many people write in such a manner, and I know that even authors, you know, have an author's story for a project. There's a chance that it may have come out of or be inspired by a trigger moment, right? Or it may be a case of maybe going through school, going through time. You just always have told yourself, oh, I'm going to write about this someday. I'm going to put this together someday. I'm going to tell a story someday. How did you find writing, or you would say, some people say writing found them? So what's your journey into writing and then into writing this book?
So I've always read a lot. I think since I was 10, 12 years old, I used to read one book a week. I read anything I could get my hands on. When I was in Queen's College, one of the things that used to annoy my dad was I would come out of my class and instead of holding a school book, I'll be holding a Mills and Boon. I must have read 3,000 Mills and Boons in my Queen's College days. So I've always read books. I read widely. I read across all genres. And I've always thought what a wonder it would be to be able to write a book. I worked in advertising where you write, but you don't write fiction. You're writing often very boring copy for a telecoms client or for an accountancy firm. But you're writing, and writing is a discipline. And I think that was really useful for me because you learn that writing it's not always fun. It's a job. It's hard work. It takes discipline. And it's not, you can't just sit there and say, oh, today the ideas will flow. They might not flow. You have to sit there. You have to grind those ideas out. So I think my advertising career was a really good training to realize that it's hard work. You have to be consistent. You have to do it every day. And you also have to take feedback. You have to be able to read something and say, actually, this is not working. Or actually, this is rubbish. I can do better. So you have to edit yourself, and to write a book, you have to really be able to edit yourself and be able to say, the 5 hours I spent yesterday crafting this perfect chapter, actually, I wasted my time because this chapter is rubbish. So you can't be too precious. But the reason I ended up writing Wahala was a lot of books by Black authors are about struggle and trauma, and they are totally valid. It's not that it's not valid, but I just sometimes think we should write about the people I talk to, the people like you, people living their best lives, you know, doing their best, getting on with it. We still have Wahala, but, you know, we are modern people. We wake up every day. We are all living what we hope will be our best lives and striving. And I wanted to have a book like that where, to be perfectly honest, color is just a backdrop. The things that happened to us didn't happen to us because we were Black or brown. You know, their Wahala was not because of their color. It was because of various things they did and various things they were encouraged to do. So I wanted to write something contemporary about people like me living their best lives, a book that they just happened to be Black rather than being Black was the point of the book. I just wanted these characters to be really modern and really positive in that sense. Things like the fashion and things like them having, you know, one's a dentist, one's in bioinformatics, one's in fashion. I wanted them to live in nice houses, to wear nice clothes. I wanted to show that being Nigerian-British, you know, you're just like everybody else. We're all just trying to do our best and live our best lives.
We're trying to get by and live our best lives.
So that was kind of the reasoning for it. I've also, I had not read a book where you had three mixed race characters as front and central, not just the girlfriend or the sidekick or the detective that comes in, but they were like the heroes.
So at what point did you decide on that title, Wahala?
So I'd written the first draft, and in my first draft, my girls wore even more clothes, went for even more lunches. All of them. They were just meeting every week, gisting, and nothing really happened. I knew what I wanted to do, but I'd fallen in love with these characters and I didn't want to hurt them. And then I realized the book was nice, but nothing happened. And what it needed was Wahala. And it literally came to me one night. I sat up in bed and said, we need to give these girls Wahala. We need to show them Pepe. And Wahala became my title. I have to confess, when I got a publisher, I was so sure they would change the name, because Wahala doesn't really mean anything here, and it doesn't mean anything in the States. And my two big publishers, one was American, one was British. And I was waiting for that conversation of, we need to change the name. We can't call it Wahala. So I am so pleased that Wahala is the name. Even the TV show is going to be called Wahala. And I think it's high time that this word it's such a cool word. I mean, in Lagos, we say it 10 times a day. And I think if it becomes part of the lexicon, that can only be a good thing. It's also, I just find it a really emotive word. You know, you can shake your head and just, Wahala.
Wahala.
Yeah, it doesn't really need explanation. So
I think the only additional qualifier to Wahala is when you now say double Wahala.
Yeah, there's actually a book by the title Double Wahala, actually. Yeah.
So maybe,
there is.
You could finish up the other, the other lines of stories. So maybe you talk about Coyote and title it Double Wahala.
Yeah.
And that actually leads me to my next question around the ending. Oh God, I felt it was a bit rushed. And I don't know if it's supposed to precede like a sequel, or should we expect like a follow-up or a Wahala 2 or something? Because
Wahala.
I have
double Wahala.
I
have that. Okay, should I go on?
Yeah, no, you finish. Sorry, finish the question. Yeah.
Okay, so I was going to say that there was a part of I didn't like the first ending for Ronke with the bending guy. I'm like, I just rolled my eyes, like, what's that? I don't know. Then there's also this part where I felt the odds that Bukola and Isabel would have been half sister were kind of very, very small. And I wrote here that I showed you that please don't play with my intelligence. Like, I don't know. Those are just like my personal sentiments. Sorry, I'm a Yoruba girl and I love to keep it that way, like super real. So I'm like, what are the odds that, she came after Simi and then Simi's mutual friends pans out to be like a half sister and all of that. But again, it's fiction, right? So I'm just curious, like, why? I mean, after taking us through those many pages, I felt like it was just fair for us to, get to sip it all the juicy details about so what was running through, what led to this end.
There'll be apologies.
So I'm like, maybe she has like a sequel or something.
Mended fences and happy ever afters.
Exactly, happy ever after. In which world? Where does this actually happen? That would be true fiction if everybody had got their comeuppance. So at the endings are hard, and there are lots of ways I could have ended the book. But I ended it the way I did intentionally. I did write the ending quite a few times, and I have had a lot of criticism. How could you do this? It's not fair. She should get her comeuppance. But to me, honestly,
write our own book.
Yes, I know. Secondly, the point was that Isabel's character. There are people in Lagos who have a ridiculous amount of entitlement who can get away with murder. And if you exaggerate that into fiction, then of course it could happen. And of course she would get away with it. People are getting away with crazy things. It's not only in Nigeria. I used to think I could tell where I was by the level of corruption around me. Now that's no longer the case. I can be in England or America and the level of corruption is so high. So to me, it was kind of, I think it's also that thing about wanting a lot of drama in your drama. I want a proper gist, and proper gist ends when you fall off a cliff. It doesn't end when they just catch you as you're dropping and wrap you
fall off and crack your head.
Yes, I agree. I think it's a good thing if people are talking about it and shaking their head and getting angry at the end. It means you've moved them. Exactly. So I've moved you, and that was my job.
Mission accomplished.
Exactly. And I do poor Coyote. That's what I will agree. Poor Coyote. He certainly didn't deserve it.
Interesting. So I think, what would you say has been your relationship with, say, Lagos, Nigeria, Africa, in terms of how long have you ever lived in these places for? Because I know that there's some of the descriptions that, you tried not to go into too many details. I know that a typical book that will write on Lagos, for instance, would not fail to talk about a downfall, just speeding past, or NEPA cutting off power. It was, and the parts of Lagos I talked about were Ikoyi Club.
Ikoyi,
was still
Bodemon. I'm like, okay, tell us
things
about
like
your
that.
childhood. Let us in.
Okay, well, let me surprise you. My childhood, I was born in Bristol. My dad's a doctor and he was studying at Bristol University in England, where he met my mum. And I went back to Nigeria with my mum and dad when I was about 1 year old. So I have no memories of Bristol. I was too young. So I grew up in Lagos. I did not grow up on the island, though. I am a mainland chick. So this island life, is imaginary. I grew up in Louth. My father worked in Louth, so we lived in Louth for my first Idiaraba, exactly, for my first 10 or so years. We did go to club, but it wasn't a Ikoyi club, it was a Papa club.
Oh, yes.
Yes, my grandmother lived in Oshodi. So we used to go to Oshodi a lot. And when my father left teaching hospital and set up his own practice, we first lived in Ikeja for a year and then lived in Oshodi. So I have crossed that expressway, Oshodi Expressway. I used to run across it daily. So I lived in Nigeria till I was 20. So I went to Corona School, Yaba. Then I went to Queen's College. Then I went to Unilag for my JAM, that first year prelim, and then I went to back to Louth to Medilag. So I am definitely a mainland chick, not an island chick.
Yeah, you're a Niger chick,
You're well-rounded.
I'm a Niger chick.
You've earned your Lagos badges.
I've earned my Lagos badges. I have ridden Danfo. I've crossed motorway. I have eaten at every decent booker in the whole country. I have bought suya outside at, apparently Polo Club suya is the best suya, but in my day, you used to go to, it was near Echo Hotel where they sold the best suya at the back there. So now I'm a proper Niger chick. And Nigeria is home. When I'm here, I think of Nigeria as home and I talk about going home. So now I went last month, but before that, because of COVID, I hadn't been for 3 years, but I try to go home every year. I still, I love Nigeria. And I hope that shows in the book.
Yes, it did.
The country, and to me it is I'm very proud of Nigeria. It's what made me, and I do think a Nigerian upbringing is the best upbringing a human being can have.
I agree.
Yeah, lovely. And I love the fact that you paid a lot of homage to our food. It's a very big part of our culture. Matter of fact, I heard that the copies of Wahala printed by Narrative Landscape in Nigeria actually has a few recipes of
at the back,
and I thought, way to go, that is so good, because I believe so much in exporting our culture and letting other people know about so many of the beautiful things about us. And so I'm just super excited. I'm proud, yay, more visibility for us, more positivity about the Nigerian culture. Nigeria, they carry last, all of that vibe was
exactly.
Yeah. Good word. My next question again would be a bit personal, because I am currently relocated to the UK roughly 2 years ago, and of course I can sort of identify with your story of moving to England in your 20s. How did you navigate that? Because I imagine quite a number of our listeners might find themselves in similar shoes. Because there's this culture of jackbarring lately.
There is,
the initial culture shocks. And I've got a few single female friends as well that are here, and they kind of complain about how it's so difficult to navigate that space as someone in your mid-20s or late 20s, and it's so hard for you to find Nigerian guys or Africans, and then
find a coyote.
You just have to cast your net wider and that kind of a thing. So what was the experience like for you? If you had a chance to perhaps write a book that addresses that, what would you try to put across?
Well, I came when I was 20, and don't forget, I just dropped out of medical school. My dad had said, you will regret this for the rest of your life. So I came carrying a lot of baggage and feeling a real sense of shame and a real sense of failure, and honestly feeling pretty crap about myself and my prospects, but also stubborn and determined. I knew medical school was not for me. And I have to say, I've probably saved many lives by not being a doctor. So it was definitely the right decision. But coming to London, and I was on my own. My mum was the same opinion. You should go back to medical school. So I was very much on my own. But I'm very old. I'm 57. So we're talking quite a long time ago. This was
7 years ago.
Exactly. And London is very different now. And Lagos, as I found when I went back, is very different. But as I said a while ago, I didn't know racism existed before I came to live in England. I didn't honestly know. I'd never experienced it, never seen it. So it came as a real shock. And as a shock in the sense of, really? These people think they're better than me? On what basis? Because it was just to be, why would you think such a thing? What would make you think so it was a shock. And I have to say, one thing I did, which if I was doing it now, and that's why I do think there's progress, I adapted to fit in. So More Nike, I was always Nike in Nigeria, became Nikki, because Nike was way too complicated. They could not spell it, they could not say
How much more More Nike?
Exactly. And my surname is Oyegunle, so every time you had to spell it and they'd look at you like, Oye, what? So I really over-adapted. I decided, okay, if you can't beat them, join them. So I became Nikki. I modulated my language. No more no more abi. It all became pardon, sorry. So I have to say I adapted.
But you still had Wahala.
I still had Wahala, and I still had my close clique of Nigerian friends where we would still be eating egusi stew. We actually used to go to a restaurant and still go. It's changed name, but we went to a restaurant called Buka, where we would go and we would sit there for hours chatting, and as we walked in, the air would come back, the abi would come back, the voices would get louder. I've always had quite a close clique of Nigerian friends, and we also now have honorary Nigerians, or Igbo people that we have allowed into our honorary Nigerian club. We taught them how to eat jollof, we've taught them how to eat eba. So I've always kept that kind of connection with home. But it is difficult, and I think things are getting better. My personal feeling is that over here things are slowly getting better. There's more expectation. We even had a Nigerian woman running for part of
I saw that.
Exactly. I mean, look at Kemi Badenoch. I mean, that is pretty impressive, even if I don't agree with all her politics, but let's not discuss politics. But so, I do think things are getting better. It was lovely watching the racing in the Commonwealth Games this week. You're sitting there saying, yes, look at us going for gold.
Probably Nigeria.
Yes. I mean, isn't that just wonderful? World Athletics, not Commonwealth. So I think it's difficult. I think you have to adapt. I think that there's still a lot of education about Nigeria being this giant of, I still have people who say, aren't you scared when you go to Lagos? And you're like, scared of what? What am I going to be scared of?
I walk the length and breadth of Oshodi. So what am I afraid of?
What am I going to be scared of? But, so there's still these preconceptions. I listened to an interview with Chimamanda where somebody said to her, do they have bookshops in Lagos? So I think
that was quite controversial.
And so I think there's still a lot of misconceptions, and I think
views.
And those are still there, and they're very unhealthy. But I think the more we have books like mine and the books, I think it will. I think hopefully it will help change minds and shift opinions.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. Can we take a moment to give it up for Sophie? Oh God, she had my heart.
Sweet little Sophia.
I know.
I think I would like to.
Sophia.
Yeah, I would like to also see the character or the person that would play Sophie.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to that in the series.
That's such a sweet and delectable, sweet and delectable
I know,
child.
such a precocious little girl.
Yeah, she's a Hollywood.
Yeah. I don't actually have kids, but I'm godmother to quite a few wonderful children, and I actually have a godchild called Saskia. She's 14 now, but she really inspired Sophia. I hope her mother's not listening. Saskia was very precocious when she was a little girl. I mean, she's beautiful, she's clever, but she definitely had attitude and opinions. And I think Sophia is quite clever, the way she divides her mom and her dad and plays both of them. I just love that.
That's an adult in a child's body.
Exactly. But she was really fun character to write. And I really loved the relationship Ronke had with Sophia. I thought that was such a lovely relationship. I really enjoyed writing it. Yeah.
So one of the things that I found interesting reading through, and I was going to, just comment, was the transition, going through, the characters. So for Boo, for instance, one of the things you also mentioned while you spoke earlier is about, people that you see that seem to have perfect lives. But when you look at them, you look at the lives that they have and you literally just wish that you had it. But when you look at them and interact with them, that's the goal, But when you look and interact with them, you realize that, for whatever reason, they still seem unhappy. They still seem like, there's more out there. And you're like, dude, I'm out here. And see, there's nothing out here, but,
trenches.
We're out on, we're on the streets, we're on the trenches, but you want to come out here. There's stuff out here. And so, one of the questions I wanted to ask about that is, what really do you think is a better escape for people like that? Because I know that when I see people like that, it starts to seem like it's the other people, but we all have those tendencies. We all have this part of our lives where people look at us and say, oh, you have it all figured out. But there's an analogy I like to give, the analogy of the paddling duck. So you see a duck, just, floating on water and looks very serene and calm, but, the feet is paddling so ferociously under the water. So what would you say about that? Yeah, go ahead.
I don't think I have a solution, but I think what you've hit on there is a problem that so many people deal with. And I think actually as Nigerians, it's almost harder because we've been brought up and educated to not show our emotions too much and to not show our insecurities and to, there's a sort of, you're supposed to be confident and arrogant. You're a Nigerian. What's wrong with you? And you're lucky, but inside. And I certainly have felt that at times in my life where everything should be perfect, but I don't feel content. I don't feel happy. And you know that you're lucky. You know that other people have it much tougher than you, but still you're not satisfied. You're not happy. I think it's human nature. I also think sometimes we never realize we were happy until it's past. So you can look back and think, why did I do that? I was so happy then. Why did I break up with that person? Or why did I leave that job? Or why did I do this? Because actually it was so good and I didn't realize. And I don't have any solutions, but what I can tell you is that getting older helps. As you get older, you start to accept yourself more. You start to know what your flaws are. You start to know what sort of person you are. And
you have the benefit of hindsight, sort of.
You have the benefit of hindsight. You also just become more comfortable in your own skin. And I think you also realize that I'm okay. I might not be the best at this. I might not be the prettiest or the tallest or the fastest, but I'm not a bad person and I'm okay in my little. And I think the sooner you can feel comfortable in your skin, the better. I think therapy is like everybody's having therapy and everybody's having mental health issues. It's become a sort of collective disease, whereas in Nigeria we don't have time for therapy. We don't have time to be depressed. You've got too much. There's too much going on. There's too much wahala.
I think most times the easiest therapy is spiritual therapy in this part of the world.
Yes, and I think that's Nigeria's solution, isn't it? It's yes, the church and God become the solution.
Church, the mosque, traditional worship, whatever it is, spiritual therapy.
But one thing I do think, and hopefully it comes across in the book, is I honestly think friendship is one of the most important bonds anybody can have, male or female. Having people who have your back, who can be honest with you, who can laugh at you and put you in your place, but can also pick you up when you're down. I think those bonds of friendship are hugely important.
Just laying on that, I know that one of the things that I hold very dear as a person now, just going a bit personal, is friendships. My top rule that I've learned, I've benefited from. I've also been a giver.
Benefactor,
a benefactor in friendships and relationships. And there's a saying that Yorubas have, and they'll say in your me. So like, it's humans around me that are my clothes. So when the world wants to see me naked, it's
cover my nakedness. That close show up for me when I need them.
So I think that just hits home. What Wahala also portrayed with those women, because they've had their journeys, they've had their fair share of issues, and they had someone come in between them and just try to really wreak havoc. But what's most important is not the fact that we are not flawed as humans, because after all, we're all flawed as humans. We're all flawed. But it's the fact that despite all of those flaws, we still are able to just find somewhere to hinge our lives into one another. And so, the difference between a latch and a hinge is, I know that a hinge is more of a joint. A latch is more of something that just locks up something, right? So when you hinge your life into someone else's, there's some sort of symbiosis that occurs. So friendships, yes, exactly. So there's some sort of, friendship mutuality that occurs. And I think there's nothing more beautiful than that in life, really. Just having...
Well, I've just written down Latch and Hinge, so if you see it appearing in Nikki May's second book,
dropping gems.
It's a pity I can't patent them, because they are...
Don't worry, Seyi, I'll put you in the acknowledgement. But I think you just put that so beautifully, and I there's so much in what you said that I actually think is hugely important, and I couldn't have said it as well as that. But I think the only other thing is that what you said about flaws, even friendships can be flawed, but that doesn't make them bad friendships, because there are times when Simi and Boo in particular are really bad friends to Ronke and to each other. But sometimes I think you should not judge people too harshly, because what is going on in their own lives can be causing them to appear, or them to not be doing the right thing. And I think what I was trying to show is that these are three very flawed women. And when this catalyst came in, she made them, because they still made their own bad mistakes. They weren't forced to do these things. They did them themselves. But personally, for me, even though the end is quite dramatic, and for some people, I'm looking at you, Tobi, unsatisfactory. What I do know is, in my head, Ronke, Simi and Boo they're still latched, they're still friends, they're still together, and they will never be that. They can never get rid of what's happened, but in my head they survive.
Yeah, lovely. I totally love that Wahala is like a celebration of friendship. And so I totally recommend the book if you're looking out for an opportunity to bond with your girls, or have some exciting, light-hearted chit chat with your guys as well. So it's not just a book for women only. Men will totally relate with the story.
I think for men, it's a book to see some familiar women problems and just learn and laugh about it.
I'm rolling my eyes at you right now.
Maybe to realize that you don't have to be a complete demon, that you're demonic.
I know, right?
You know what they say about guys, and when issues arise, and the guys are just like, guy, it don't happen, we will move on, Jerry. That kind of thing. But the women, they allow it, it's into them and stuff like that. But again, men are from Mars.
Yes.
This is like my last serious question, which would be perhaps your biggest influences as a writer, as an author. Like, what would you say were the best books you've ever read? I know it's kind of like putting you in a tight place. But
it's hard. And I think every day my answer might be slightly different, because it's subjective. And today I'm going to give you an answer. Ask me next week, I'll probably give you a different one.
It's fine.
But I would say Half a Yellow Sun is one of the best books I've ever read. I really think it is a class of its own. I love that book. I also felt a bit ashamed when I read it, because being Nigerian, I should have known a lot more about the Biafran War. And I felt a little bit, how come I didn't know all of this? How come I wasn't more aware? So I think she just did that whole story. I think she's amazing. We all know that. But I do think that book is just, of all her books, that is the one that I will always love. But then I also I love Agatha Christie books. I grew up reading them in Lagos. And I actually think if you want to write, Agatha Christie is one of the best teachers you will ever find. She has this way of constructing a book that you can almost see how she's constructed it. And I also think if you want to learn how to write, reading is just the best way to learn. So I love Agatha Christie's. I read them over and over again. But I read loads. I read, as I said, I've read a book a week since I was about 10. So loving Nearly All the Men in Lagos Are Mad. I just love this title. I wish I'd come up with the title. I read romance. I don't read any fantasy, but I love thrillers. I love crime. Reading is such a wonderful way to escape and a wonderful way to, close the door, and it's just bliss.
Yeah, it's like literally what I've done my entire life, and even getting to make a business or make money off that has been like the greatest joy of my life. Yeah.
I don't trust people who don't read.
You can say that again. Totally. So this is gonna be like, I don't know if she has more questions for you, but
no, I don't. I
want to give our listeners the benefit of hearing you speak Yoruba for a bit. Yeah, so I'm putting you on the spot. Yes, so.
Well, that's Yoruba already. That's Yoruba already.
You've heard your Lagos part, so yeah. Taking you. Say hello to our listeners in Yoruba. Yeah, so let's hear it.
Well, Ekason and Ekule and this is, you're putting me on the spot. Check the software. This is hard. One thing I love about Yoruba is the greetings. The Ekusimi Sunday, Ekujoku. I mean, there's well done for sitting down, well done for standing up, well done for eating. Everything. I love it. I love it. So my Yoruba is very rusty, I will admit. When I was living, it was much. And if I come back, it comes, and I can swear like an area boy, to be fair. But I won't practice that right now.
You're fine, because I encounter people from Spain, Spanish women, and how they just switch it on you with like they go all out when they are hungry and pissed, and I'm like, why can't I do the same when I'm pissed too as a Yoruba woman? Like when anybody's just acting a fool around me, I'm just like at the train station or something.
Exactly.
I just want that make my breath and it just makes me feel better. Like
it does. I do think our greetings and our curses are the sweetest. They're sweeter than any other language.
I love that language so much, and thank you for celebrating it too. I saw the Eforiro, even though the narrator did not do justice to it, but she tried.
Oh, she tried her best. Yeah,
yeah, she did, and I felt like she muttered a few words, but in all, she was a great attempt. To be honest, I listened to the book. Seyi read the hard copy because I couldn't access. I couldn't access the copy here in the UK at the time. So that's been so exciting having this conversation with you. I've been grinning here to here. I think my chin literally aches right now, and I truly enjoyed having this chat. I hope Seyi also had a good time as well.
Absolutely, it was a fire, session. It was good to just reminiscing on a lot of things I spoke about. Lagos as at the time when you left, and coming back.
Yeah,
and I know how that feeling when you step out of the airport and the heat just hits you. And like, I'm
looking forward to that. I've not been home since I got here.
There's a smell when you come out of the airport. It's gasoline. Yes. It's just so beautiful, and you're home. But Eshegun, I've had such a lovely time talking to you, and I hope I can come back and do it all over again with my second book when it comes out.
Oh yeah,
and I actually have to comment the fact that I love the fact that you're so warm and receptive. I love how you try as much as possible to repost every mention of Wahala. When people tag you, you repost, you appreciate them. And that's a good thing. And it brings the author closer to home, and people
without readers, we don't exist. More. So without readers, I don't exist. And without people like you who love books. So don't worry, I'll be there on Instagram. I'll be there on Twitter. Instead of writing, I'm there retweeting.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. Yeah, lovely.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you for tuning in. You can grab copies of Wahala, buy for your friend, buy for the Yoruba demons in your life, and even for your enemies too. You can grab copies from Roving Night Bookstore, anywhere reputable books are sold in Nigeria, and of course on Amazon. Just do well to grab a copy there. And trust me, it's a page turner. You would not put that book down until you get to like the last page. And that's it from me. Seyi, over to you.
Thank you very much.
So much,
Nikki, thank you very much. And we'll look forward to reading the next book when it comes out, and hopefully have you for another fire session.
Definitely. Thanks so much.
Yeah, enjoy.
Yeah.